Sarah, a 26-year-old struggling college graduate, finds herself drowning in student loans and credit card debt while working multiple part-time jobs just to survive. When her boyfriend David's wealthy parents unexpectedly offer to pay off all her debts, over $85,000, she thinks it's a miracle. But the generosity comes with strings attached that slowly transform from helpful suggestions into controlling demands. What starts as gratitude quickly becomes a nightmare, as Sarah realizes she's trapped in a web of manipulation, forced to become their personal servant under the threat of having to repay everything immediately. Now she must find the courage to break free from their control and reclaim her independence, even if it means losing everything she thought she wanted. The eviction notice felt like sandpaper between my trembling fingers as I read it for the third time. 30 days. That's all I had left before I'd be living in my beat-up Honda Civic, assuming they didn't repossess that, too. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 26, I was drowning in a sea of debt that seemed to have no shore in sight. The cramped studio apartment in Queens smelled like mildew and broken dreams. Through the paper-thin walls, I could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's television blaring Spanish soap operas while her baby cried incessantly. The October wind rattled my loose window frame, letting in the bitter New York air that cut right through my threadbare sweater. I pulled it tighter around my shoulders and stared at the stack of bills scattered across my rickety kitchen table like accusations. Student loans, $67,000. Credit cards, $18,000. Medical bills from last year's emergency room visit, $3,200. The numbers blurred together as tears welled up in my eyes. 3 part-time jobs, waitressing at Tony's Diner, stocking shelves at CVS, and tutoring kids after school. And I still couldn't make ends meet. Every month I watched the interest compound, turning my debt into a monster that grew faster than I could feed it. My phone buzzed with a text from David, my boyfriend of 8 months. Family dinner at 7, Mom's making her famous pot roast. Can't wait to see you. The cheerful tone felt like a slap in the face. How could I sit at their pristine dining table in their Westchester mansion, pretending everything was fine when my world was crumbling? The Harringtons lived in a different universe. Their house was a sprawling colonial with manicured lawns and a circular driveway where their Mercedes and BMW sat like trophies. Mr. Richard Harrington owned 3 successful restaurants in Manhattan, while Mrs. Catherine Harrington ran a high-end interior design business. They were the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen, who discussed stock portfolios over breakfast and treated $1,000 dinners as casual Tuesday nights. I met David at a coffee shop near NYU where I was cramming for my finance degree final exams. He was charming, kind, and completely unaware of how the other half lived. When he talked about wanting to slum it by eating at food trucks, I realized just how vast the gap between our worlds really was. But he seemed to genuinely care about me, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe everything would work out. That evening, I stood on the Harringtons' marble doorstep, my hands shaking as I pressed the doorbell. The familiar Westminster chimes echoed through the house like church bells announcing my arrival. David opened the door, his face lighting up with that boyish smile that had first caught my attention. "Sarah?" "You look beautiful," he said, pulling me into a warm embrace. I was wearing my only decent dress, a navy blue number I'd bought at Target 3 years ago for job interviews. Next to his crisp white button-down and perfectly pressed khakis, I felt like a shabby imposter. The dining room was a showcase of wealth and taste. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the mahogany table set with bone china and silver that probably cost more than my rent. Mrs. Harrington, elegant in her cream-colored cashmere sweater and pearl necklace, smiled at me with the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to entertaining. "Sarah, darling, how lovely to see you again. You look a bit tired, dear. Are you sleeping well?" Her voice carried that particular brand of concern that felt more like scrutiny. "Mr. Harrington, imposing in his tailored suit even at home, nodded approvingly as he carved the pot roast with surgical precision. "Just work," I said, forcing a smile. "3 jobs keep me pretty busy." "3 jobs?" Mrs. Harrington's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. "My goodness, that sounds exhausting. What kind of work?" I felt David's hand squeeze mine encouragingly under the table. "I wait tables, do some retail, and tutor kids in math and English." "How admirable," Mr. Harrington said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. "Hard work builds character. I started washing dishes in my first restaurant, you know." The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. They discussed their upcoming charity gala, their recent trip to Napa Valley, and their plans to renovate their summer house. I smiled and nodded at appropriate moments, feeling increasingly like an outsider looking through a window at a life I could never afford. After dinner, as we sat in their living room with its Persian rugs and original artwork, Mrs. Harrington fixed me with a penetrating stare. "Sarah, dear, you seem quite stressed. Is everything all right financially?" My cheeks burned with embarrassment. "I'm managing," I lied, twisting my napkin in my lap. David leaned forward. "Mom, maybe we shouldn't—" "Nonsense," she interrupted smoothly. "We're practically family. David's told us about your student loans. It must be such a burden for someone your age." Mr. Harrington set down his brandy snifter with a decisive clink. "Sarah, we've been discussing your situation. We know things are tight, and we'd like to help." My heart stopped. "Help?" "We'd like to pay off your debts," Mrs. Harrington said matter-of-factly, as if she were offering to buy me coffee. "All of them. Student loans, credit cards, everything." The room spun. $85,000. They were talking about $85,000 like it was pocket change. I can't accept that. It's too much." "Nonsense," Mr. Harrington waved dismissively. "Consider it an investment in David's happiness. A loan, if it makes you feel better. No interest, no timeline for repayment." David's face was radiant with excitement. "Sarah, this is incredible. You'll finally be free to breathe, to start your career properly." Mrs. Harrington leaned forward, her smile warm, but her eyes calculating. "Of course, we'd appreciate your help with a few things around here. Nothing major, just some light assistance with entertaining, maybe some errands when we're busy. Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement." The words hung in the air like smoke. Something cold settled in my stomach, but the relief of imagining a life without crushing debt was intoxicating. No more sleepless nights calculating interest rates, no more choosing between groceries and gas money, no more eviction notices. "What do you think, sweetheart?" David asked, his eyes shining with hope. I looked around the opulent room, at these people who could casually erase my biggest problems with a check, at the boy I was falling in love with, who saw only the generous gesture and not the subtle undertones. And what would you do? If someone offered to solve your biggest problem, would you see the strings attached, or would desperation make you blind to the warning signs? "Yes," I whispered, sealing my fate. "Thank you. I accept." Mrs. Harrington's smile widened, and for just a moment, it reminded me of a cat who'd cornered a mouse. But surely I was imagining things. These were good people helping me out of kindness, right? What I didn't know was that their generosity came with a price tag that would make my debt seem like pocket change. The real cost of their help was about to become devastatingly clear. 3 weeks after the Harringtons paid off my debts, I should have been the happiest person alive. Instead, I was standing in their marble foyer at 6 in the morning, wearing a black uniform dress that Mrs. Harrington had suggested I purchase, holding a silver tray of coffee and pastries for their house guests. The transformation had been gradual, like a slow-acting poison. First, it was small requests. "Sarah, dear, could you help me organize the flowers for the dinner party?" Then it escalated. "Sarah, I need you to pick up Mr. Harrington's dry cleaning and stop by the grocery store for the special olives. Soon, I was spending more time at their house than my own apartment, which I could suddenly afford to keep thanks to their generosity. The morning sun streamed through their floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the Persian rugs as I served breakfast to their weekend guests, a state senator and his wife, who were considering Mr. Harrington for some political appointment. I moved silently between the dining room and kitchen, invisible in the way that only servants could be. "More coffee, Senator Williams?" Mrs. Harrington's voice was honey-sweet, her political smile perfectly in place. She gestured toward me without looking. "Sarah, dear, could you freshen everyone's cups?" I poured the coffee with practiced precision, my hands steady despite the humiliation burning in my chest. 3 months ago, I'd been a college graduate with a finance degree and dreams of working on Wall Street. Now I was pouring coffee for people who discussed stock portfolios while I calculated whether I could afford lunch. "Excellent service," the senator's wife murmured to Mrs. Harrington. "Where did you find her?" "Oh, Sarah's practically family," Mrs. Harrington replied with that cat-like smile. "She's been such a blessing, so eager to help out." Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Family members weren't expected to scrub toilets at 5 in the morning or iron. Mr. Harrington's shirts until their fingers were raw from the steam. Family members weren't handed detailed lists of chores each morning or lectured about gratitude when they showed even the slightest resistance. After the guests left, Mrs. Harrington cornered me in the kitchen while I was washing the breakfast dishes. Her designer heels clicked against the marble floors as she approached, her expression shifting from public sweetness to private steel. "Sarah, I'm disappointed in your performance this morning," she said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. "You forgot to offer cream with the coffee, and I noticed you didn't properly polish the silver tray." My hand stilled in the soapy water. "I'm sorry. I'll do better next time." "I certainly hope so." She moved closer, her expensive perfume overwhelming in the small space between us. "I'd hate for David to learn about your lack of appreciation for what we've done for you." The threat hung in the air like a blade. David still believed his parents were saints who'd rescued me out of pure kindness. He didn't see the way his mother's smile disappeared the moment he left the room, or how his father spoke to me like I was a piece of furniture when they were alone. "Mrs. Harrington," I said carefully, "I was wondering if we could discuss my arrangement here. Maybe set some boundaries about—" "Boundaries?" Her laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "My dear girl, you seem to have forgotten something important. We own you now. Every dollar of that $85,000 is a chain around your neck, and until you repay every penny, you'll do exactly as we say." My blood turned to ice. "But you said it was a loan with no timeline." "Oh, there's a timeline now," she interrupted smoothly. "Market rates have changed. We're charging 7% interest, compounded daily. At your current rate of repayment, which is 0 since you're not paying us anything, you now owe approximately $92,000. The kitchen spun around me. "That's not what we agreed. Do you have a contract that says otherwise?" Her smile was victorious. "I thought not. You see, Sarah, desperation makes people careless. You were so grateful, so eager to accept our help, that you never asked for anything in writing." I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white with strain. "What do you want from me?" "Complete obedience, total dedication. You'll work for us until your debt is paid, and you'll do it with a smile." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And if you even think about telling David the truth, I'll make sure that debt becomes legally binding. I'll destroy your credit, sue you for every penny, and make sure you never work in finance again. Is that clear?" Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of her. "Crystal clear." "Excellent. Now, finish the dishes and start on the laundry. David's coming for dinner tonight, and I want everything perfect for my son." That evening, I sat at the dining table in my regular clothes, playing the role of beloved girlfriend while the Harringtons played doting almost in-laws. David, oblivious to the morning's confrontation, chatted excitedly about his promotion at the law firm and our future together. "Mom, Dad, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for Sarah," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "She's been so much happier since you helped with her debts." Mrs. Harrington beamed at him, the picture of maternal love. "We're just happy to help family, darling. Sarah's been such a joy to have around." Under the table, her heel ground into my foot, a reminder, a warning, a promise of worse things to come if I stepped out of line. "Actually," David continued, his eyes bright with excitement, "I've been thinking about asking Sarah to move in with me. We could get a place together, maybe start planning for the future." The room went dead silent. Mrs. Harrington's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "How wonderful, dear. Though Sarah's been such a help here, I'd hate to lose her assistance with the household." "I'm sure we can work something out," David said easily. "Maybe Sarah could still help out on weekends or something." I saw my chance. Maybe my only chance. If I could move in with David, escape this house, maybe I could find a way to break free from their control. Maybe I could tell him the truth, get him to understand what his parents had done. "That sounds perfect," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I'd love to move in with you, David." Mrs. Harrington's eyes flashed with fury before the mask slipped back into place. "Of course, dear. We'll discuss the details later." But I saw the calculation behind her eyes, the plotting that was already beginning. The Harringtons hadn't invested $85,000 in me just to let me walk away. They owned me, and they weren't about to let their investment slip through their fingers. As David walked me to my car that night, chattering about apartment hunting and furniture shopping, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October wind. Mrs. Harrington watched from the front window, her silhouette backlit like a predator studying her prey. What would you do if the people who saved you turned out to be your captors? How far would you go to escape a golden cage that was slowly crushing your soul? I was about to find out just how ruthless the wealthy could be when their control was threatened. The Harringtons had shown me their generosity. Now they were about to show me their true power, and the price of defying them would be higher than I ever imagined possible.